like a king and you can be my queen. Packed in a party bus down in Gulf Shores. Had a flight at 6, lost my voice at 4. Youngest I will be. Youngest I will be in my life. Youngest I will be. Oh, today's the youngest I will be in my life. Heading to go grab some food. Skip the exit, you were in a driving mood. Reminiscing life was highways and a van. So we drove as far away as we can. Youngest I will be. Youngest I will be in my life. Youngest I will be. Oh, today's the youngest I will be in my life. I wish I knew, yeah, I wish I knew. Life speeds up and then you're through. I wish I knew, yeah, I wish I knew. Life speeds up and then you're through. Life speeds up and then you're through. Yeah, life speeds up and then you're through. Oh, life speeds up and then you're through. Youngest I will be. Today's the youngest I will be in my life. Youngest I will be. Today's the youngest I will be in my life.
Hi. Hey friends, C-Note here. Welcome to C-Note Cocktail Hour. I don't even know if this is legal to do on the internet, but I'm doing it. I don't care. Welcome, join me, have a good time. Today I just wanted to kind of cover a couple of, well, really how the week has been. Couple of topics I'll be talking about in the near future, things coming up on dopamine. And the fact that I'm going to be on FNL tonight with Landon Porter on the Gorilla Group. We're going to talk about Social Acuity. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what kind of a preview of what that's going to be like. And then there's been an interesting conversation about logos and people asking a little bit about, like, should I have a logo? Or people have very, very strong opinions about whether or not they should have a logo for their business, depending on what kind of business there is. So I'm going to kind of try to give a different perspective on why you should at least consider a logo, even if you're someone who is working a smaller business, working with fewer people, or relying more on word of mouth to promote your brand and your services. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off the intro and then take a drink, and then we're going to do this thing, and it's going to be a good time. So join me. Go grab a drink. All right, welcome back. Officially welcome to the show. I got comments pulled up here. Hopefully I can see everything, see how you guys are doing. So first of all, let me know if you're watching. Say hello. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how your week has been. I'm curious to know, what you've been up to, if there's a big win that you can celebrate at the end of the week. I'm not a big Friday person personally, because I just work all the time. But Fridays are kind of ceremoniously the time to kind of reflect on the week, celebrate what you've been up to, things like that. So, what's up, James? Welcome to the party. Having a drink. Wait, no labels. There's more labels. I can't do this. There's like, it would just look like a giant baby. Anyway, so yeah, this is meant to be like more of a, and hi, Ashley Avalon, welcome. I know you do a lot of stuff with LinkedIn, so I think there's some stuff we can talk about in the future with that. But I just wanted to make more of a fun show because right now I'm doing a lot of serious stuff. I'm doing things where I'm talking about mental health. I'm doing things where I'm talking about Myers-Briggs intensity with like personality finding and talking about not being a jerk and things like that. And, we're going to talk about stuff. But, at this point, we're going to kind of just try to keep it loose. So I call this C-Note Cocktail Hour. I don't know if I'm going to do this every Friday, but hey, maybe we will. I don't know. If it's fun, we'll have a good time. So again, let me know how you're doing, what you're up to, and we'll talk about that. And also let me know if you have any questions about, design, me, my shirt, things in the background, what beer I'm drinking, things like that. Actually, I'll just tell you. It's a Blue Moon Belgian White. Just don't tell them because they're not paying me. And frankly, they should. So I do have 3 topics that I want to kind of break down and talk about. The first one being, hold on one second. This guy, Thanos. I don't know if you've seen Infinity War, but this guy's a pretty big character in that. And he's an interesting character. So this little segment is going to be kind of a brief overview. I'm not going to go into any spoiler territory because I just want to talk loosely about the character and how that applies to Myers-Briggs and how that character is very strongly a very mature but kind of in the other evil direction INFJ. And then I'll do another video in the future about how INFJs are relate to Thanos and all that stuff in a little bit more detail. And apologize for the wind and the noise. It's looks like it's going to storm, and if I close the windows, I will burn up. So sorry about that in advance. Let's take another swig. Okay, so Thanos, INFJ. Let me know if my mic is too hot. Looks like it's okay. I can back off a little bit. Maybe I can just stop yelling. It'll be okay. So yeah, Thanos, being an INFJ, INFJs are, their cognitive stack starts with introverted intuition, goes into extroverted feeling, then introverted thinking, and extroverted sensing. And how Thanos kind of falls into that is Thanos is very much about his own introverted intuition, his own perception of how the universe should be. He makes judgments about people pretty quickly. He knows things about Tony Stark. He knows things about other characters. He is very, very in tune with his perspective and his version of the universe, or how the universe should be in his eyes. NI, introverted intuition, versus NE, extroverted intuition, typically the difference is a singular idea versus a multitude of ideas. So Thanos is very, very focused on his notion of eliminating half the universe using the Infinity Gauntlet. That is his driving force. That is his introverted intuition. That is his main driving force. That one scene in particular, again, not a spoilery scene, but the one scene in particular where he's talking about, he's talking to Gamora and he's saying, I'm the only one that can see that this needs to happen. That's a very INFJ thing. INFJs can be very much feeling like they're the one that has the answer. I'm the only one that can see this. I'm the only one that can fix this. That sort of thing. INFJs also, their secondary function, FE, extroverted feeling, focuses on the bigger picture in terms of people. The extroverted feeling of the universe, what people need, and trying to create a sense of harmony amongst people. Now, Thanos' version of creating harmony is by making sure that all of existence can continue by reducing the numbers of people inside of that existence. It's an extreme sort of way to accomplish that, but essentially his sort of focus and goal is about making sure that the universe can continue, and that his introverted intuition focus is based on that. It's based on the feeling that all the people in the world need this. I'm going to kill one of these windows real quick, because that wind is picking up. It's funny, lately when I've started to do videos, the neighborhood comes alive suddenly. Yesterday I was doing videos with James Gaffney, and a guy in the neighborhood just started mowing the lawn, and there were kids outside yelling, and the wind picked up, and it's just, I'm not winning here. So to continue with Thanos, he is a guy that is very, very focused on what he feels is the benefit of the universe, because it's almost like his intentions are not even malicious. The way that he wants to do it is malicious, but he's not trying to destroy the universe for the sake of destroying the universe. He's trying to destroy half of existence as a means to preserve it. Again, it's extreme, but it's the intention there. It's almost, you can almost relate to Hitler in a way. It's kind of interesting. His third function, his introverted thinking, is his way of cultivating the plan that he has to do. Thanos has to go through this sequence of events quickly enough so that the cosmic forces don't, come at him quickly. So he's got a plan. He's executing it quickly. That's kind of his introverted thinking doing his thing. Beer and Thanos is indeed a great afternoon combo, says Molly. And just sitting here having a good time. And then his last function is extroverted sensing, which, again, this is why I think he's like more of a mature INFJ, because his extroverted sensing is what allows him to go out into the world. But usually because it's the weakest function for a lot of INFJs, like human, non-fictional character INFJs, because it's so weak, INFJs tend to spend a lot of time by themselves. They don't go out into the world so much. They're not very... sometimes they can have like a weakness towards material things occasionally, depending on how mature your... mature you are as an INFJ. And it could also explain why the Infinity Gauntlet is gold. It's very opulent. And he had to fashion that himself. And he had a big gold armor situation. So everything that he's putting forth into the world, which also could account for the J function, everything that he's putting forth into the world is very put together, very strong, very masculine, very... there's an intentionality with his presentation, and he's trying to make sure that people know he's intimidating, people know that he's put together, and he's trying to be the active driving force in the world. There's a lot more nuances to go into it, and I'll do a separate video on that, but that's the idea of what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Thanos being INFJ, and is definitely on brand for that character and for me drinking. Anyway, so next topic is talking about logos. Should I switch the camera? No, we're fine. I feel like I should be topic. Let's move over here. I don't know. This is like live production, so if I could just quickly cut to another camera and be like, hi, that would be fun, but can't do that right now. So, yes, next thing, while we take another swig, which I just did already, but whatever. Next topic is, should you have a logo? Now, this is something that came up in the Guerrilla group. There's a lot of people talking and some pontificating, including myself, and some who are really passionate about the idea of having a logo or not having a logo. Now, this is only my opinion, but take note that I've been a designer for nearly 20 years, and, I kind of know a thing or two. The general idea is that a logo is not the most important thing you need. But a logo is something that you should consider when you're having a little bit of trouble trying to define what your brand is. When you're trying to figure out where you should go with things, how you need to, you need to take that time to work on your introspection to figure out what a logo needs to have, So when you're thinking about the idea of whether or not you should have a logo, you should first think about what your driving force is. If it's something that you need to use as a means to discover who you are, then it's something you should explore, especially if you're working with a designer. Now, the thing about working with a designer is a lot of people think it's just about painting a pretty picture and making something that represents you externally. But really, a lot of the process of building a logo is about that introspective journey, is about figuring out what's going on with you, what it is about your brand and who you are and what you do that can be encapsulated into this thing that you can be proud of, you can be excited about, that you can put on the front of your store or on your business cards or on your Facebook page or whatever, and feel excited about it and be proud about it. That's kind of the thing. Like, a lot of people are like, I have connections with people. I already have a business. Things are going, and it's great, and that's fine. You may not necessarily need a logo in that case, you don't need anything too complicated. But I do recommend diving into the process of developing a logo if you're stuck. If you're trying to figure out who you want to talk to, who you want to market to, what your product or service really even is, and then find out how you can put your personality into that thing. And then kind of the last aspect of it that I really wanted to break down was talking about the fact that a logo is not something you need to get started. You don't need to have a polished, pretty logo to do anything. If you have a business idea, make the thing, do the thing, go out into the world and make your business and connect with people and do the stuff. Drinking while doing this is like, I'm getting gassy. So the whole idea of building a logo for yourself is part of is thinking about the fact that it's more about, I shouldn't say it's more, but part of it is about like internal exploration cognitively and emotionally, and how you want to express that externally. A lot of people just think about like, I don't need a logo. I don't need to connect with people. So those are like my general thoughts on that. If you're in the Guerrilla group, there is a post about should you have a logo? And that's something I'm probably going to ask in the next few days. Like, I want to ask like how much people think a logo costs, what they think that process is like, and whether or not it's useful for them, So that's the deal. And then last one, as we start to wrap this up, how long have we been going? About 17 minutes. So not an hour, sorry. Cocktail hour is more like a 20-minute and then you pass out sort of thing. So Gassy Christian should be the cocktail hour's new title. Yes, Gassy C-Note. Welcome to Gassy C-Note. This is where we talk about beer and graphic design. And I'm going to tell you a little thing or two about graphics, guys. You and I, we're going to get together and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about how you should be living your life. It's not what we do here. It's up to you. You can do what you want. You're an adult. Last thing I wanted to talk about was tonight I'm going to be on the Guerrilla Group's FNL. They're doing an open mic night sort of thing. Landon Porter with the Guerrilla Group, if you're not in the Guerrilla Group, they're a really great place to learn about not being a douchey salesperson and really finding ways to connect with people on a more genuine level, but it's like it's kind of playing in this nuance of like, yes, you're selling things to people, but you're also making friends at the same time. Some people see that as a little douchey on its own, but whatever. It's not about being disingenuine. It's about connecting with people in a way that's genuine, in a way that's a little bit more human, as opposed to, hey, buy my shit. Like, that's not, no. Like, the difference being, if you're walking through like a trade show or something, I shouldn't say trade show, like a flea market, and you got that guy that's trying to sell you cable, the guy that's coming up to you and is like, hey, you got cable? Or like, what kind of cable provider you got, huh? Why don't you, huh? I want to know. I want to know what kind of cable you got so I could sell you my cable. I just want to know. That's all. What? Where you going? Why? No? Okay. That's the idea, is to avoid doing that. And if you're really someone who's trying to sell cable, you ask questions first. And you find out who genuinely needs your service or wants your service. And you kind of create the relevance, and then you stab them with the relevance. That'll make sense to somebody. So, Yeah, tonight, Friday Night Live, we're going to talk about social acuity, which is like an extension of that. So social acuity is really this idea that you can go into a room, you can get a vibe for the people in the room, you can know what's going on, and this is a metaphorical and physical room. You can figure out what's going on in the world, in this situation, kind of get a sense based on the who you've defined as your type of people that you want to market to or connect with, and go towards those people and know how to start that conversation in a way that you're listening to them and you're learning about them. You're asking questions and you're not just in a douchey way interjecting yourself into the conversation. People are, crowded around a table and they're just talking about life, and you come in and you be like, hey, you want to buy my cable? What's your cable provider? Huh? You want to buy cable? Huh? I'd love it if you buy cable, because then I get a commission. It'll be great. That's not life. That's not how it goes. Social acuity is the nuance of finding ways to connect with people, and it's kind of like a way of planting seeds when you're connecting with human beings. It's like you're talking to people about your thing, but you're not like, hey, I need you to buy this because I'm desperate. It's more like you're finding ways to provide more value than you're getting. It's that whole like Gary V, like give, ask sort of deal. You listen to the conversations, you listen to someone's wants and needs, you listen to who they are, you learn about them, you develop the relationship over time, and they'll ask you the question eventually, like, so what do you do? And you tell them, and you practice your spiel, but you do it in a way that's like, you can connect with people in a way that is not harmful or difficult for people to understand. So that's kind of the general idea. But what we're going to talk about specifically as it pertains to that is the group itself talk about social acuity and just kind of using it. But I want to break down with them the different paths it takes to get to using social acuity, because not everyone has the instinct to connect with people. I'm not a natural people pickle person. Not a people pickle person. Purple pickle person. Want to buy some cable? And doing this sort of thing, I get nervous because I'm doing it live. I'm not a people person naturally at all. I've had to learn through experience how to connect with people, how to sell in a way that is not being douchey, and how to take the time to listen to people and to be in tune with people's emotions and learn about how other people think. So the idea is like, we're going to talk about different types of people. There are people who are a little bit more spiritual in nature and holistic. There are people who learn through experience and just doing things and trial and error. There are people who need research and cognitive things and action plans. And there are other people who just are naturals. They're empathic. They know how to connect with people. They can work a room. They know how to do it already. So kind of, it's going to be about kind of defining those people, where they fit on the social acuity spectrum, and what they can do to kind of go to the next level. So Molly says, you got this people person thing, baby steps for the win, which is true. I'm more like crawling like a wounded animal. Is really more like what's going on with that. Part of my version of working on my peopling is taking the time to create my boundaries first, because I do have like some natural sense to want to be a people person, to want to connect with people. But, I drain really easily. I go out into the world and I'm like, I'm done. The clock is ticking. I walk into a room with a lot of people and I feel like anxiety is building and things are just not feeling good. And then I start feeling bad about myself because of the way that I naturally feel. A lot of introverts struggle with that. A lot of introverts struggle with the feeling of like wanting to be an extrovert, wanting to connect and wanting to be better. So I do feel like I'm pretty good at first. I go into it, I'm excited, I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? And I can be fun, I can be charming, I've got a lot of that. But I feel internally that I am fading fast. And I'm working on that through boundaries, setting boundaries in terms of like scheduling, talking to people, doing these lives in somewhat of a limited fashion. But I'm also using doing these lives as a means to get myself more comfortable, talking to people publicly about topics, thinking ahead of time, or practicing being in the moment more. I used to take improv classes as a way to help myself to be more in the moment, to be out of my head a little bit more, and to allow myself to just kind of like, be in it and connect and talk to people. So, David Yard says it's like you need a day just to nap after dealing with people. And that's usually how that is for me. It's just like I do a lot of interviews, or I do a lot of talking, I do a lot of connecting. I'll do a lot of, even on Facebook, just a lot of back and forth. This is how I internet, by the way. Just thumbs. I don't even look at the screen. I just look at myself in a camera, and I just go boop, boop, like literally out loud. I'm like boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 boop. And it's exhausting. James says, psychic energy, brah. I burn through it faster when I'm not in my controlled environment. Right. And that's about like the setting the boundaries thing, I'm controlling the message because I have topics that I want to talk about here, and then you guys are kind of like getting involved in this and talking with me and hanging out. And I'm also setting the tone in setting calendar appointments, and like I don't get random phone calls anymore. I don't answer them. I never did for a long time, but now I have zero reason to look at my phone and say like, who the hell is that? Ugh. And then you answer it. No, I'm just like, I have complete control over knowing who I'm going to talk to and when I'm going to talk to them. And that's pretty great. And that includes like going out, when Molly and I go out, there's usually a plan, or she gives me some sort of heads up, and, I get a little bit of time to kind of mentally prepare for it and to figure out how to balance my calendar the next day, because it's almost like an equal or more amount of time the following day needs to be reserved for me to recover. Burpee time. Let's see. Molly says it's definitely harder when you're not in a controlled situation. So many factors that can be draining, and I do make those noises out loud. That is very true. I'm very boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop. Want to buy some cable? Huh? So, do you guys find that you run to each other and kind of hide together in social situations? He's asking Molly and I that. She is way more naturally extroverted than I am, but she checks on me, and not in a way that is like, like a puppy, but she'll be like, you good? You doing all right? Because she's just aware of it. And I think that's what's been helpful in our relationship is that, she likes it. She loves it. She's like out in the world and like she's connecting with people and sunshine and everything's great. And I'm like, where's the rain? I want to go back into my cave. But, her energy and my energy together really meshes well. I kind of feed off of her energy too, and it kind of helps me in that sense. And then I also am able to just kind of like look at my own reserve tank and be able to be open with her about where I'm at with that. If I couldn't handle it, then I would just tell her. I'd let her know that like we got to go soon. I'm sorry. Or I would find a way to handle it myself first, meaning I'd go for a walk, or I'd go hang out in the bathroom for a little bit. It's kind of an introvert sort of tip is when you're going into a social situation, like figure out where your recharge spot is, whether it's like a part of the room, whether it's like over the table eating all the snacks where it's like people are not hanging out as much, or, a back alley, with a bathroom, or wherever it is that you could find a place to like escape for a few minutes to sort of recharge and just breathe and just be like, okay, let's go do this. That's usually what I end up doing. Because it's hard because my natural inclination is I just want to stay inside all the time. I'm fine with opening the windows, feeling a breeze. Like, I've got food. I could do Facebook Lives and connect with people this way. I don't need to go outside. But, she encourages me to go out and do things, and that's good for me, because if I get stuck in my own head, then I don't go anywhere, I don't do anything, I don't develop new interests or new ideas. I'm just kind of like re-exploring my own headspace, and that's fucking scary. So we got some comments. James says, my wife and I do that. We're the weirdos in the corner. Molly, like I said, she doesn't need to hide much, but it's a totally weird situation. Yes, not condescendingly, in reference to asking if I'm okay. And yeah, we're a pretty good balance, because she's not so extroverted in the sense that she'll get mad at me if I'm not going out with her. Like, she'll go out and do her own thing, or I'll go with her and do stuff, but we'll kind of both get some of that drained feeling if we're too into things, like too into it, and we'll just crash the next day. So, and usually the with her extroverted exploration, because she's an ENFP, with her extroverted exploration, she's the type of person that novelty exists in different ways. Like, we can just go to the movies, and that can kind of fulfill some of the peopling for her, and then that fulfills, not having to interact with people for me. The thing about me, though, too, is like, I like to just be around people sometimes in more of an ambient situation. Like, if I go somewhere and I know that I'm going to interact with people, it's very, very different than if I'm just going to Starbucks and being around human beings. Like, I can go to Starbucks and hang around people all day. I have my headphones on. I'm not dealing with any madness. I don't have to deal with anyone's emotions or try to gauge people. That stuff, that's really where it gets exhausting, is trying to read people. But in terms of physically being around people, it's not so bad. Though, I'm okay taking some time to lay around in my own filth every once in a while. Hey, you want to buy some cable? Let's see. Other comments. Yeah, Molly also says that she is fine going out by herself if she's not up to it. And James says, if I could take meetings while being lost in the woods alone, that'd be just perfect. You just got to figure out the Wi-Fi situation. And then you'll probably be fine. It's no big deal. Molly says, we're also perfectly fine sitting next to each other silently at home, too. And that is a game changer for me, because that's not something I've ever really had. In my previous relationships, really being around like family or anything like that, well, my family, we all go to our corners and we interact occasionally, but if we interact too much, it's a problem. But in previous relationships, there's always the expectation of like, you're playing video games, why are you not paying attention to me? Or you're doing this, why are you not paying attention to me? And we have a good balance where, her and I, we have like these nerdy, lofty dreams about and visions of our life. So we've had these occasional moments where we're just like, we're in it right now, where like I'm making music and she's doing some painting stuff, and we're listening to music, or I'm listening to my own music, she's listening to her own thing, but we're in the same space, we're doing stuff, and there's like a combined energy of just doing things, and it's like we're together, but we're not like, it's not forced, we're enjoying each other's company without having to interact, which is really nice. It takes the pressure off of me, because being who I am as an INTP, there's an aspect of us that we really, really love our independence, and we don't want, it's exhausting to feel like you're trying to entertain someone constantly, or to feel like you have to, satiate someone's emotional needs. And I just need time to not have to do that. I need time to focus on my stuff. And she really gives me the time to do that. Now we find this balance of doing that, but her giving me my time makes me want to be closer to her, like physically and emotionally. So it's like this nice, strange balance, which is also another INTP thing. It's like, give us our room to breathe, and we'll love you more. It's crazy, but it's how it goes. And she's really figured that out, and that's really been working for us. And another big thing has been allowing myself to play games and enjoy things like that. I mean, we're both incredibly nerdy. I started playing Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, and she's a big Lord of the Rings fan. I know nothing about Lord of the Rings, but I heard it's a good game, and I started playing it. And she's all excited about the lore and everything that's going on and all the voices and what's going on. And I'm just like playing video games, and she's just listening in the background, reading a comic book. Every once in a while she hears a thing and she's like, oh, that music's so good. And, we're just hanging out, and that's fucking rad. So it took a long time. It took a long time for both of us in our lives separately to figure out that that's what we would want together with somebody that eventually became each other. Not to get too specific on anything, but we both had situations that were a little more cliche in some ways, in that sense. There's some insecurity you have to deal with the other person, and you got to make sure that they're okay. And there was a lack of self-awareness with our previous partners, and we're both very self-aware people. We're both we have a lot of things that are in common. We talk about everything. We're very open about anything we have an issue with. So if there's something I find difficult, or if I've had a difficulty understanding an emotional response or something, I could literally just ask her about it, and she's open about it. And it's not something where I have to wait like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to find out what was wrong. You get that typical like, what's wrong? And then she says nothing. Like, that stuff never works. What relationships usually work are the ones that you can just be open about everything and air your grievances, say what you need to say, talk about things, don't listen to the CW where every relationship is about someone who doesn't say something that they need to say. Talk about your shit, be real about what you're going through, and connect with your partner. That's really the thing. So, we both learned that through, I think we both wanted that in our previous relationships, but we weren't getting the reciprocation. And now it's just so natural for both of us to do this, and we're constantly working on it. We're not perfect by any means. There is a video on YouTube called The Mathematics of Love that is really, really good when it comes to exploring the depths of relationships and probabilities and stuff if you're more of a thinking type. But there is some emotional aspects as well. Like even the woman that's presenting it, you can tell that she's more of a thinking type, and she's just like, I'm not good at emotions. I'm not very sweet. I don't know what to do with that. So it talks about some statistics with like how people can connect a little bit more with each other through just simply being open. That relationships that are being real about their problems and voicing their opinions to each other and working through it and being respectful to each other tend to work out better and last longer. There's also an interesting statistic about how people who are not spouses who are not communicating, and the conflict that arrives around that is akin to the start of a nuclear war. So, that's why you get so much like negative. As you get so many negative, stereotypical stigmas about marriage, like, oh, my wife, she's such a hag. Oh, my husband, he's such a child. I assume that's how normal people talk, right? Oh, she's such a nag. Oh, he's such a child. I don't know. Oh, Archie. So, catch up on some comments. Molly says she loves that I play video games, hobbies for the win. Which is, okay, that's another thing. As we continue to make this an actual hour, it turns out. is the fact that she's supportive of the fact that I need hobbies. Because I'm always a very, like, hustle. I've got a lot of ideas. I don't drink much because, I'm not very good at relaxing. And I just need more hobbies. And she's supportive of that. So that's why I started playing video games. I got to explore doing improv again. And just doing more things for myself. Just for fun. Not turning it into a business idea. So, let's see some more comments. James says, y'all so sweet. I appreciate that. You southern man, you. For Frodo, says Tom Knight. I know nothing about Lord of the Rings. Like, that's a thing that we'll eventually watch. Something about the fantasy genre just doesn't do it for me, and I don't know. Which is interesting, because, like, I like The Legend of Zelda a lot. I like cartoon representations of fantasy, so maybe that's it. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe the live action stuff is a little bit too like, what are you doing? So I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. So James says that is fucking rad. For Frodo, also it has taken lots of life fuck ups to get to this place, which is true. You know, we messed up a lot in our lives, and even with each other, we've made little mistakes and we worked through it and we figured things out. You know, just being honest with each other. You know, we made some pretty crazy, you know, mistakes to even get to this point. So, but that's not something I'm drunk enough to talk about yet. Let's see. Molly says, be a grown-ass woman, own your feelings and talk about it. Or a grown-ass man. Yes, be a grown-ass man and talk about your feelings. Let's talk about that for a second. Because, man, grown-ass men, you gotta own your shit. Like, anger is an emotional response. You know that, right? Like, if you're angry, if you're insecure, if you're, like, trying to project and say, like, oh, what are you doing here? If your tone of voice goes into, that's an emotional response. Anger is an emotion. And the problem is that, like, you know, society in general has created this toxic masculinity through pop culture and whatever, and the preference for what a man should be, that it has distilled all emotional responses into anger. And then, you know, you get those kinds of men in charge of the nuclear codes. Let's see. And then, you know, there's... People talk about toxic masculinity a lot, but they also... I don't think we talk enough about toxic femininity. Like, that whole, like... I'm tipping because I'm leaning against something and I was falling, and I'm like, I look like I'm drunk, and I'm not drunk yet. So, sorry, don't worry about that. Toxic femininity is a thing also, and that's something I've also dealt a lot with, and that's like, it's toxic. Anything from either gender tends to fall under the insecurity label. You know, it's, you're feeling insecure, you don't know what to do with it, so you project it in some form, or you don't think enough. Like, I don't mean that in an insulting way, but, like, that's just not how your brain works. Like, you're not a thinking type. Or there are types out there that literally just say things. They say the first thing that comes to their mind. They don't think about it. That's really what I'm referring to. And they just do what they're exposed to. You know, they just say sayings. They say things. They say what they feel like they're expected to say. In terms of, like, I don't know, who's that girl? Like, who's this? Like, you know, being all up in everyone's business, or like looking at someone's phone, or doing a lot of that playing games nonsense. Like, I don't even feel like people come up with those ideas themselves. Like, they see it on, like, Bravo or something, and they're just like, I'm gonna get you. So, yeah. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, James says, don't play mind games. It's the ultimate relationship funnel. It's pretty good. We talk about relationship funnels a lot in groups and things. Molly, James says, Molly, totally. And Molly says it's exactly how I talk, which is true. And enjoy your life for fuck's sake. Have you seen Book of Kells? I don't know what that is. Secret of Kells? I don't know, but I'll look at it. Sure. Molly says yes, so they're talking to each other, and I'm just here. Okay. So Molly brings up another point, and she's good at keeping this conversation going. She says, I statements are so much more helpful than you statements. That's a good example of something that her and I have been improving in our relationship, and something that has been like a light bulb for me. This style of communicating that is so prevalent in everywhere, of projecting. Again, just the general idea of projecting, but literally using words to project your anger. And saying like, you're always such a jerk. You're such an asshole. Why are you always using that dickish charm? Why don't you pay attention to me? Why don't you love me? Why don't you do this? Why don't you change? Why don't you become better? Why don't you stop talking to these people? Why don't you stop doing this? Why don't you get a job? Why don't you blah, blah, blah? And what is helpful in those conversations is not suppressing what those feelings are, but to find a way to reword them and approach them as I statements. Like, so her and I had this one talk in a coffee shop, and there was a moment where she said a phrase. She said, I like to reiterate a lot. When I'm talking to people and I'm having conversations, the way that I let them know that I'm listening is I will kind of reiterate and maybe retranslate just a little bit what it is that they just said. And, there was one time that I did that. I kind of reciprocated what, I was just kind of responding to what she said, and just kind of my way of letting her know I was listening was like responding to it. And so she said, yeah, that's what I said. And to me, that felt like a trigger. That felt like a stab. Like, oh, okay, I won't do that again. And in that moment, we had the conversation about it. I talked to her and I said, I started saying, like, you said this. But then that's when we had the conversation about the I statements and you statements. So I changed my approach and my tone, and I was like, I felt stupid when you said, yeah, that's what I said, as if I shouldn't have said that. And she acknowledged it, and we've made adjustments, and I don't think we've had that kind of issue since. So it's been really good. We've got another 13 minutes here. Molly says, rather than owning your reactions by saying it made me feel hurt when you said this thing. Yeah, owning your emotions, owning your emotional reaction. And that's really what a lot of these like relationship things are emotional reactions. When I've been learning more and more about the Myers-Briggs stuff and really diving into the different personality types, I'm starting to learn more about the default actions of different types, the different default ways of thinking for different types. S types, for example, are just a little bit more reactionary, a little bit more in the moment, and they're likely to say something that is maybe not necessarily their first thought or their most accurate thought. They'll just say something because it's like, it's funny or it's cute or it's instinctual or it's something they want to do. Sometimes it's inappropriate and they don't know, and they have to be corrected a lot of the time. Or they'll come back later and correct themselves. S types are just not the best in that sense. S types are typically a little bit more traditional, especially SF types are a little bit more traditional, whether it comes to religion or marriage or what's been done, and just kind of following a path. There's a reason that SF types are the most abundant in the world, and religion is so prevalent. People are just kind of following a path. They're trying to not fall out of line. They're trying to just kind of like fit within the tribe, not stand out in any kind of negative way. And then you've got other types that are maybe a little bit too lost in thought, like my type, INTP. The N types are a little bit more abstract. We think about the future. We think about ideas. And, sometimes we have a harder time staying grounded and staying in the moment and, playing video games and enjoying hobbies. We're very focused on big picture things. And S types are a little bit better at being, a little bit more grounded in reality. This is what I have to do, so I'm going to do it. Whereas N types are like, what are the possibilities? There's so many things that I could do. So those types are interesting, and those are things that I could kind of break down in the future. But generally, diving into these different types has helped me understand people's emotions better, understand people's approaches to the world, approaches to conflict, and approaches to business as well. It's kind of helped me see the signs of what types I'm going to start connecting with, which types I would have a better time connecting with, which types I would have a more difficult time connecting with. or how to navigate them and actually be a little bit more forgiving of people, because I'm like, oh, you know what? They're just being their personality type. They can't even help it. It's not like, I almost treat it like it's not their fault. It's not that I won't correct them or help them, but I essentially just try to treat it like it's not their fault, and I don't take it personally. That's one thing that has been a big change for me, is learning ways, including through Myers-Briggs, to not take things personally. Because big, bombastic, emotional responses like don't help anything. You know, they don't move things forward. They are signs that something needs to change and that we need to communicate and need to work through something. But emotional for the sake of emotional is just as bad as thinking for the sake of thinking. You know, you get in a loop, you know, you don't go anywhere. So learning about those types has really helped me to move forward in that sense. And then Molly says, which helped me understand you more because that statement meant something totally different coming from me. And she's talking about the yeah, that's what I said comment. Because again, like statements, context is everything. You know, statements, the way people word things, the way that people approach things, the way that people express emotions, it's all different for everybody. You know, and we have to have patience and a sense of curiosity, honestly, to try to figure out where someone is actually coming from. Are they coming from a base level of like, this is just how I think and this is how I react and I'm a reactionary person and I'm angry now, but I'll calm down later? Or are you, you know, sad about everything, or are you cold, calculated, and thinking? Or are they, you know, what angle are they approaching it from? And then, you know, Molly and I have been working through our own deep-seated histories. Like, we've only met about 9 months ago, and like we have our entire lives to talk about and figure out, discuss our patterns and our behaviors and learning about each other and how to grow with each other. And there's just a lot, there's a lot to work through. There's a lot of self-actualization and understanding that we need to coalesce and put into a package and share with each other as we kamehameha each other. And, which is like what the kids are calling it these days, apparently. So, point being is that in that moment when she was bringing up the fact that, like, she just said a statement that to her was just an everyday statement. To her, it was just like, yeah, that's what I said. And to me, I'm like, So I needed to describe that to her and say that, okay, that was a statement that because of this, or likely because of this in my past or previous situations or things that I've dealt with in my life, this is just it's a different scenario. And I'm growing and I'm adjusting. I'm unlearning certain behaviors, especially when it comes to a relationship like this that is so healthy and supportive and good, that the only things I've really ever dealt with for the most part or been exposed to in my past, you know, is a lot of the typical stuff. And to the point where, you know, the reason I got married is because I didn't think it was possible to not be beyond the typical stuff. But, you know, Molly's really showed me differently. I've been able to grow and learn myself. And we've been working together at being better people, in that sense. So Molly also says, be curious, not judgmental, and never gets old. Yeah. So as I wrap up, got about 5.5 minutes, because I'm here at this point, right? I wasn't going to do an hour, but I don't know. Now let's make it an hour. Let's do this whole thing. So to kind of recap, I think later this week I'm going to do a full-on INFJ video about Thanos, full-on spoiler video to talk about the movie, talk about the character, talk about his motivations and why INFJ fits him so well. I really want to talk about a lot of the nuances of the film and, you know, kind of think about starting a series of doing this for fictional characters, because the more that I dive into Myers-Briggs, I can't help but do it in my head. Like, we're watching TV and I'm like, what is that type? Like, that's my brain constantly. So if I feel like I can figure out or narrow down a type, I'll do videos on them. You know, I want to do a Tony Stark thing. I think it'd be good. There's a lot of misconceptions about his type. I think he's more of an INTP than an ENTP, personally. People think he's an extrovert, but he doesn't actually like being out in public. So that's another thing I'd like to talk about. You know, topics about should you have a logo. So I think next Thursday, I'm going to do a longer discussion about the whole logo thing. And then tonight, if you're in the Guerrilla group at 8 o'clock, is FNL, Friday Night Live, where I'm going to join Landon Porter, and we're going to talk about social acuity and all of that good stuff. As usual, there are a couple episodes of Dopamine posting next week. I don't know who's posting. Let me see what episode is coming up. Just check my calendar real quick. This is how we do. Calendaring. Next Wednesday we've got Wednesday the 9th. I've got Joy Idris on the show. So that's a really good talk. It's a little bit more on the woo side. So, you know, for you guys sick of me talking about technical stuff, get a little bit more woo on this one. So it's pretty good. Some topics I'm thinking about talking about next week. Trying to get a topic going about nutrition and mental health. Got a couple of different ideas about owning your mental health and taking full responsibility for who you are. I've got a running list of stuff. So I'm taking ideas. So if you got ideas for things I can talk about, I want to talk a little bit about like faking it till you make it, that kind of concept, because I think it's kind of not fully a thing you should always do. Let's see, the value of time. Arrogance versus confidence. I think I could rehash that one. I've done that one before. Let's see. Helping versus trolling. Yes. We're going to do that one next week. Helping versus trolling. Basically, someone who's on the internet and they're like, I'm just trying to help you, bro. But they're just like harassing you. So we're going to talk about that next week as well. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I'll play out a track from the new Matt and Kim album at the end of this, and just like, I don't know, dance a little bit. Maybe, yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna do a dance Friday night dance party. Let's do it. It's gonna be a good time. Hi, my name is Christian.com, dopamine.life. If you could join the Dopamine group, dopamine.group, dopamine.group. It's a mental health support group for creatives and entrepreneurs. It's a safe space for, I ask a lot of questions. If you're having a rough day, it's a place that you can vent. You can ask people questions about medication. You can ask about different topics. And you know, someone even asked about, you know, sex and depression. And that's why I did that on a video. So with that, let's do dance party. Oh man, yep. I'm going to mute my microphone and then I'll dance and then we'll fade it out and then it'll be great. See you guys. Hi, my name is Christian.com.
like I used to be. I should be more like I used to be.
And yeah, the sales have said, but I'm not dead yet. I could count on one hand right all the hours I slept each night. Oh yeah, the sales have said, but I'm not dead yet. I could count on one hand right all the hours I slept each night. Oh yeah, the sales have said, but I'm not dead.